Okay, great. People are joining. So we'll just wait for a bit. Okay, it's 10 o'clock now. I'll wait just a couple of minutes because some people are still joining. Some people like to join right on 10. I can still see people joining, but what I'll do is I'll start the intro now, and then hopefully everyone will be in by the time we've started. So anyway, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Billy Hume from Practice Evolve. For those of you who don't know, we provide business operating software to over 550 law firms, which currently service 10,000 users across Ireland, UK, and Australia. Today, I'm delighted to be introducing Amy Bell once again, who will be presenting today the third and final part of her series of webinars. These webinars are designed to shine a light on important topics, including regulation, fraud, cybercrime, and issues that firms are starting to consider for the future, including pricing and value in the world that is changing rapidly. Today, Amy will be talking about what do tomorrow's partners want? How will technology affect the role of the lawyer in the future? How can you manage the administrative and compliance burdens of tomorrow? And what business models will the firms of tomorrow adopt? Just got a word or two on the Zoom software we're using today. I'm pretty sure you all know how this works, but just to confirm, please use the Q&A button to ask questions as we run through the presentation, and we'll answer these towards the end. Please avoid using the chat button, as I'll not really be keeping up to speed there. With all the housekeeping done anyway, over to you, Amy.
Thank you, Billy. Hi, everybody. If this is the first time you've met me, I'm Amy Bell. I'm a solicitor. I've been a solicitor since 1999. It's quite a while ago. I've worked in small firms. I was a culp and a director of a tiny law firm. I've worked in large law firms, and in my day job as a consultant, I work with all different sizes, shapes and sizes of both UK law firms and international law firms. And I normally am here talking about compliance. Normally, that's what I'm most known for. You can see from the slide. I'm pretty obsessed, I suppose, with anti-money laundering. But anti-money laundering is just one of the kind of areas that I'm interested in. I'm interested in how law works as a business, especially as now I'm a business owner myself, and became super aware super quickly what I didn't know about running a business when I opened a business. And that was having been a solicitor, for quite a while at that point, 18 years. And it's been fascinating to me to watch the shape of the profession change and the needs and wants. So one of my roles that I had in the dim and distant past was I was also head of learning and development for a law firm, which gave me a really interesting perspective, not just on the compliance and how do we get people to do things for compliance, which was what I talk about quite a lot, but actually what are the skills that people want and what are people looking to get out of their work-life balance. And so when I started Teal, one of the things about like our purpose for existing is about making sure that the legal sector, when you engage with it, feels safe. And one of the things that, we're starting to see in the headlines quite a lot is that actually some of our lawyers don't feel safe. So what is the problem that we've got with the current model? Obviously, when I started in the law back in 1999, that's why I tell you about it. The name, a girl shared a post the other day about, used to be able to have smoking in the offices then. I mean, it blows my mind to think about it. But, the secretaries used to all smoke in the office, and then it went to, you can't smoke in the office, you've got to go out. And it seems like another lifetime ago. When I entered the profession, of course, many of us, our destination that we were heading for as quickly as possible was equity partnership. The kind of signal sign that you had been successful in your career was how quickly could you get to equity partnership. And over the years, I don't think that's the same anymore. I don't think that's the same. In fact, I know it's not the same. In my role, as I say, at Teal Compliance, we help lots of small and medium-sized businesses. And I think there's a lot of those businesses where people had hoped to have retired out and been able to kind of do what they did, which was, welcome new equity partners in that would bring in the capital that would mean that the exiting equity partners could leave with their share of the pie. And that's just not happening anymore. And what we're seeing also is a change in the priorities of the workforce, and not just about whether people are attracted to hitting that equity partnership, but actually what people want out of a day job. And I think this has been accelerated by COVID. But I don't think it's just that. I don't think it's just that at all, actually. So what we see when we look at the research that people do with, and there's been quite a bit of research about this, I'm going to reference some of them as we're going through, but young lawyers increasingly prioritising well-being, flexibility and ethical alignment. And we're going to unpack some of those, especially the ethical one, I think is really important. Not that we're not ethical now, but I'll come on to it a bit later on when I talk about it. And there are rising concerns over burnout. Law Care, which is a charity for solicitors in the UK, and there's Law Care all over the world, I found out on my travels. They said in their report that came out last year that 69% of legal professionals are experiencing mental health in the past year. I personally, in my fee-earning career, did experience mental health myself, and was probably, at the time I thought I was the only person. And as soon as I came back from being off on the sick, I had this kind of procession of people who came along to tell me, actually, me too. Actually, yeah, I'm taking some antidepressants. Yes, I'm in therapy for this. And that's, way back 2004, 2005. It's not new, this, but people are questioning why is it so prevalent now that 69% of legal professionals feel that that their mental health is being affected. So the IBA did a study about this, the International Bar Association did a study about this a couple of years ago, as well as Law Care, and it's a Thomson Reuters paper as well. And what we're seeing is this, as I say, this shift in priorities for young lawyers. So over 60% of young lawyers cite work-life balance as a major concern to them. And I think we'll see a little while why that might be. What is it about being a lawyer that feels like that? And that burnout is particularly high amongst those at 26 to 35, partly because of their lowest autonomy and highest work intensity, or that's their perception. So just to kind of unpack that a little bit, work-life balance. We just looking generationally, if you look back to, you know, my grandparents, for example, survived a war. My parents, you know, knew hard times, working, grafting. I, you know, told, if you don't work hard, you don't get anything. My generation have been able, when they're bringing their children up, quite a lot of us, to not have to be able to say you get nothing if you don't work for it. And people have become more aware, and I think social media has got a part to play in this, with becoming aware of what is the meaning of life generally. We're going to talk about tech later on and how that facilitates better work-life balance, but people are getting curious about what's the point of being here in a way that earlier generations didn't ask in quite the same way. And the always on nature of who we are. Now, I've always said this about being a solicitor. Being a solicitor is a 24/7 job. You can't switch it off. We know that our ethical obligations exist all the time. So, you know, it always was quite high pressured. But back in the day when, you know, Diane in conveyancing was smoking in her office, she switched the computer off when she left the office, and that was it. You know, nobody could get her at home. Nobody could ring her or send her it. Were no mobile phones back in the 90s, you know, and so you were shutting the door and you were going home, and you might be working long hours, but then shutting the door, going home. I used to, in those days, I used to do all my dictation at the weekend. I used to take 6 boxes of files home, remember that, and a dictaphone, and on a Monday morning there'd be 6 tapes waiting for the team. So, you know, there was hard work back in those days. I'm not saying there wasn't, but you were able to choose what you wanted to do. People weren't invading your space in quite the same way as people experience now. Ethical concerns. This is really interesting. There's been a conversation happening in the legal sector for a little while, not just in the UK legal sector, actually the international legal sector, about should we do some work that we do? Should we act for certain clients that we act for? And this is a conversation that the younger generation are interested in. As people become more aware of green issues, they become more aware of sustainability, and again, not just fueled by social media, but also an awareness growing through social media. People are questioning whether we should act for certain people. So in AML, which is what I normally talk about, we've seen this, where, you know, we have politicians, we have people questioning who we choose to act for, particularly, you know, some of larger firms were acting for people who have subsequently been sanctioned after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And lawyers, younger lawyers, are going, should we do that? Do we really want to act for those people? Do we really want to act for, I don't know, big polluters? Do we really want to act for tobacco manufacturers? So that's also, you know, becoming part of their priority. And I think what this is signaling is a value-based role, a role which is that triggers in some way that there's a purpose to it, and it's a worthy purpose that they're tuned into. And then we've got flexibility. And you can see from the top stat, you know, there on the burnout, where they feel that they lack autonomy, but they've got loads of work, which is perceived as a lack of flexibility. This is certainly an identified and recognized phenomena in the larger firms, some of the larger firms, particularly a lack of flexibility being about having to be in the office. And this was one of the things that I think, particularly in COVID, people, all areas of the workforce, not just the younger lawyers, but all areas of the workforce said, hang on a minute, prior to COVID, I was told if I wanted to do flexible working, wanted to work at home, that the business couldn't accommodate that, or it'd be difficult to accommodate that because of security issues, compliance issues, supervision, training, all of those kinds of very valid reasons. But then COVID came along and suddenly we all made it work. And we've got a bit of it's a little bit of conflict, a bit of tension between actually the kind of industry wanting to return to people being in offices and being able to see them, speak to them, check they're all right, all of those good things, but younger lawyers saying, well, actually, no, I want to build my life in this way. And I want to be able to be at home at a certain time. I want to be able to commit to having a pet, for example. That means that I need this flexible working. So there's this kind of shift in priorities from certainly when I entered the workforce, when I was just like, where do you want me to be? And I'll be there, you know, not the same kind of thing. So the decline of the partnership model. And whether it's attractive. And I mean, one of the things we've got to talk about is what are the risks? I'm a compliance person. I'm not going to go through a webinar without talking about risks. Okay. And so obviously the risk of a partnership model is jointly and severably liable. And query the younger lawyers, does that make sense to them? Does that make sense? I remember very vividly an equity partner in the firm I worked for. I was desperate to get to salary partner. I was desperate to get to equity partner. And I really had no concept of what it was, really. And I don't think it was my naivety. It was just that was, you know, that was the goal. That was where we were heading for. And one of the equity partners turned around to me and said, Amy, listen, be super careful about this, because the people you're getting in partnership with, it's like a marriage. You know, you've got to really, because you're going to have to trust each other. You're going to be liable for things. You're going to have to come to an agreement with things. So just don't rush into it. I mean, what she said to me way back in 2003 or something, 2004. It stuck with me ever since. And you know, I have seen over the sector a reduction in the partnership model and a growth in a model where there's a team that run the business, and then there's a separate team of client delivery services. So fee earners, but we're seeing this rise of businesses, and there's some very successful models out there where they're limited companies and they're bringing in CEOs and they're bringing in specialists for certain things. Obviously, you've got to get to a certain size to be able to do that, but this kind of limited liability and the other kind of hallmark, which is bringing in people who know how to run businesses and letting them do that, so that the lawyers can really get on with doing the lawyering. So it's a lawyer who wants to be a career lawyer these days may not be that attracted by all the other hats you've got to wear when you become an equity partner and you're running the business. They might just want to indulge in the joy of delivering legal services and don't see that, you know, running a business is anything that they want to do and need to do. We talked about the burnout. Again, more stats. 28% of legal professionals feel required to be available 24/7. Partly that's, you know, when you're elevated to partnership, you know, you've got that role, you've got a people manager role, you've got the business management role. And so even if it isn't clients getting hold of you, it's that. And lack of sleep and worry. I mean, as I said, I run a compliance business. Literally my business helps people stop worrying. I mean, that's what it's for, really. People are worried about compliance and I go, come to me, I'll help you. So I'm very familiar with this concept of senior people in firms worrying about things and losing sleep over things. And there are a lot of responsibilities on the shoulders of a partner. You've got, obviously, you've got compliance, COLP, COFA role, the COLP being responsible for the way everything's done, the COFA being responsible for the financial performance of the business and you know, being alert to that. You've got your money laundering reporting officer, your data protection officer. You've got HR responsibilities, huge amount of additional roles that people will worry that they might feel out the depth to do. And therefore, it's not that attractive for me to have to take on these roles. And we have seen alternative career paths for lawyers. Back in my day, you could go in-house or you could go into a law firm. And that was about it, really. We've seen, you know, a growth in different roles. Compliance, for example, is now a career path for lawyers. It didn't really used to be there. And believe it or not, there's not that many compliance equity partner roles out there on themselves. Compliance is a discipline. So people are taking different routes. They're going off being specialists in things that they enjoy. And we also see consultancy and this the growth of the consultancy model where you reverse into a machine that somebody else is managing for you. There's quite a few well-known ones. Keystone would be one, where you know, all of the lawyers are responsible for finding their own work, and they basically share a percentage of the fee that they recover back to the business. It's a completely upside down, different way of doing it. Just financially is. So, you know, in the traditional partnership law firm model, the lawyer would get paid a third of what they bill in the old 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 model. So 1/3 for me, 1/3 to pay for me, and then 1/3 to the partnership. Now on this consultancy model, what lawyers are seeing is that they can do 60, 70% that they keep, and they kick the 30% in. And so they're going, well, this is great. I haven't got any of those responsibilities of running this business. I get to do the lawyering all the time, and I get to keep quite a lot of money. And so these are different ways of doing it that are attractive. So I think we've depressed us all with 20 minutes about what the problems are that everybody's perceiving with the original one. I believe very passionately about how important smaller law firms are. I'm obviously, you know, support larger law firms, but if you're from a small law firm and you're wondering about any of these things, how do you attract people to want to keep your firm going? I mean, that's the $64,000 question, really. How do we build a law firm that means we can carry on? And as I say, I'm incredibly passionate about this. And I'll tell you a little story about why I'm passionate about this. When I was a trainee solicitor, I worked in a small high street firm, 5 branch offices. So probably not that small, about 100 people altogether across the 5 branches. As a trainee, I used to run the clinic in family law. And a guy came in to me one day and he said, Amy, can you help me? It was on a Wednesday. He said, I'm really scared. He was kind of 6 foot odd, big guy. He had overalls on. He was a bike mechanic, greasy hands. And he said, Amy, can you help me? I said, well, you know, what's happened? He said, well, I went out on Saturday night and I got drunk and stupidly kissed a girl. And somebody saw me and told my girlfriend about it. And now she's kicked me out. She won't let me see the kids. And I've never missed a bedtime before. And I've not seen them since Saturday. And I'm just terrified that she won't let me see them. And he broke down in tears, this big biker guy. And I was just like, this is why local law is so important. This is why finding a way to attract and keep people engaged and enjoying their life in a small law firm is so important, because where would he have gone if there was no small law? And, you know, as we do feel that smaller law firms, local law firms are threatened, you know, the high streets aren't as busy as they were, the footfall's not there, there's online things that they can, you know, get access to, why are they going to keep coming to us? Part of solving that, part of maintaining that local law firm presence is about bringing on a next generation. So we promised in this session we'd have a look at what solutions might be to be able to like kind of get behind some of those problems that we've discussed. The burnout, the always on, not having enough time to do stuff, the fear of getting things wrong. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was technology and how technology can help in that. I've always been a process person. I've always been interested in what the process is of law, not just the kind of the fun of delivering it. I mean, if it is fun, you know, but for me, it's fun helping people solve a problem and understand their way through something I personally enjoy. But some of the stuff I hate doing, you know, and we all do. And in my world in compliance, you know, part of that is a lot of compliance feels like an administrative task. It feels boring. And people don't want to do it. And people resist doing it. And we will talk a little bit about why compliance programs don't always work and what we can do to build them so they do work in the future. But certainly technology exists to be able to assist with administrative tasks. There's all kinds of them within your case management system. I mean, your whole case management system that you've got, I mean, the whole point of that was to reduce, you know, I'll go back to Tracy in conveyancing, you know, and, you know, having a typewriting and paper emails, you know, more efficient. Don't have to fold the letter up for a start and put a stamp on the thing, you know. Um, and I think that we are just at the start, really, of how technology can help us to convert things. I'll give you an example. I do quite a few of these webinars because I like trying to help people. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm talking at you for like an hour about stuff. And hopefully it's valuable, hopefully it's useful what I'm saying. And, you know, I've invested that hour. You sit down with a client and you sit and chat with them, chatting with them for an hour, maybe, and you're giving them advice and you're gathering information from them, valuable information. In the old days when, you know, I had Joanne and she used to do all my typing. I'd come out of that meeting, I'd sit and dictate the thing, the note, and then that would turn up on the file. And then if anyone looked at the file after me, they'd be able to figure out what we discussed, what I advised, and all of that kind of stuff. And then we'd put it in a letter, and the good old days for anyone who remembers that. Email came along and making people do their own typing came along. And so do you know what happened? The file notes got really short. People stopped making them. People came out of meetings and just said, confirm our meeting today in an email. I said, boom, 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 3 points or something like that. And what I know from dealing with complaints and claims is that we've lost a lot of the granular detail that we really need to capture. And that's in an attempt to make the process more efficient. So I asked Billy, I've done 2 of these already, haven't I, Billy, for you? This is my 3rd in my series. I just asked him, can you send me the recordings from the last 2 that I did? And I'll send you back some articles. And this is a trade secret, right? So don't be telling anyone this. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the transcripts from those webinars that I've done. And then I'm going to put them into ChatGPT. And I'm going to say, ChatGPT, you are now familiar with my tone of voice. In fact, here's a transcript of me talking, so you know my tone of voice. Please create me 3 blogs from the things I've talked about in that webinar, and it will do it. And it will sound like me. And I don't have to do anything. I just have to prompt the tech. So ChatGPT, I wouldn't advise using ChatGPT for client stuff, but technology is coming on closed circuit LLMs, like language models, that are safe from a privacy point of view, where you upload the conversation you've had with the client, the Zoom call you've had with the client, it keeps a full note with all the actions of what you said you were going to do, and we'll draft the email for you that you've got to do. And all you've got to do is prompt it. You know, some of the stuff where we've lost some of the things that used to happen back in the day, we can bring back with technology, if only we think about what we actually need. You know, the way that AI particularly is learning. I'm going to come back to AI at the bottom because I've put risks of AI at the bottom, but the way that it is learning is astounding, the rate at which it's improving. As I say, if I had said to ChatGPT 6 months ago, please write it in my tone of voice, it would have said, what is your tone of voice? Please explain. Now it just has to read something I've written and it knows, or a few things it's written, and it remembers now. So there we go. Tech can facilitate flexible working. Of course it can, or else we wouldn't be having this conversation on Zoom now. You know, we're back in the day, nobody used Zoom. That's why Billy said you all know how Zoom works now, because we do. And we've got the collaboration tools. People, you know, we work on SharePoint at Teal, so we can work on the same documents, versions. We can share, you know, real-time whiteboards for collaborating on things. Technology is there to be able to facilitate things that we used to do face-to-face. There are some things it can't do that we still need to do face-to-face, which I'm coming on to in a little bit. I do think that the workforce these days, of course, when I started, you know, you had to learn touch typing when I started because nobody taught it you. My kids, their speed of keyboard work, you know, would get whatever the top prize in the typing test would have been. They're astoundingly quick at it, and their ability to think about what tech might be able to do for them. And I think this is the younger people who've grown up with tech coming through. who are expecting us to be able to deliver that, because that's what they expect. They don't want to be leaving university and then coming into the workforce and finding out that the tools that they were used to using that they were getting are just not there now, and they've kind of taken a step backwards. So I think investment in tech, and I'll talk about investment in tech in a second, about the challenge for that in a partnership model. And then AI. Is AI coming to take our jobs? You might wonder. No, it's not. It's not coming to take our jobs. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. It isn't good. Anything it turns out from me from a webinar, I still have to check, and I'd still have to edit and go. I asked it the other day, please, here's a webinar. Please tell me some facts from my webinar that I can use as LinkedIn posts. And it quoted a load of facts back to me. And I said, are you sure I said those things? Because I'm pretty sure I didn't say any of those things. And they're like, oh, yeah, actually, you're quite correct, Amy. You didn't say those. These are the things you actually said, And so it imagines stuff. It can get stuff wrong. It's not there yet. So whilst I think that there is a place for AI to help us, research things really quickly, think about things. Another thing I used it for the other day, I'm over in Australia. That's why it's dark here and it's daytime where you are. And next time I come to Australia, I'm going to do a bit of a tour around Australia. I said, can you please tell me the 5 next largest cities in New South Wales, apart from Sydney, and list them in order of the easiest way to travel between them? And it told me in 4 seconds, right? It told me. Now, just thinking about how a lawyer sat there trying to figure out how to do something can just ask it to research and come up with that stuff, and the time it saves, I think it is amazing. It isn't a cure-all AI, and I just mentioned privacy before. Okay, there are different ways of using OpenAI, ChatGPT, and what we do see in the law is we've seen larger firms start to create their own closed loop of information, so that when it gets information, the AI doesn't go out into the internet and pull back anything. It's trained by the firm in a closed loop. So the data that it's using is only the data that the firm's given it, and it's not been polluted by anything anywhere else. That's what big law firms are being able to do. But it won't be long before people release, and I think there probably are some already, models that you can plug into that have been kind of sanitized, if you like, so that they're not full of dross and they don't imagine things. And I think that will become more prevalent. And as the younger generation, as I say, are used to experiencing tech. I mean, we just had our back placing girl from a few years ago. She stayed with us at university. She did 2 days a week for us for the couple of years while she was doing her degree. She just graduated and left us to pursue a master's. But she was telling me about how ChatGPT is being used as a student, and they're just cognizant now that they are going to use these tools, and so we have to figure out how to facilitate them in what we're doing. So that's the tech. Now, compliance. I couldn't talk to you about anything without sticking compliance in it. Compliance is scary to people. As I say, the whole point of Teal existing is so people feel safe working in the legal sector. And compliance is simply a framework for people to feel safe. Clients to feel that they're going to get looked after and given the right advice. People who work in the law firm feeling safe. Okay. And I think there's a few parts to attracting people to want to commit their careers to you when it comes to compliance. One of the kind of missteps we can make when we're trying to attract people to want to come and take over the management of our business and prolong the business, after we've left, is scare people about compliance. Now, don't get me wrong, people regularly pay me money to come and scare people about compliance. That's literally what some of the work that I do. Come in, Amy, they're not listening to me. They'll listen to you, though. Please come and scare them. And you can imagine I come across quite a lot of younger lawyers who have heard loud and clear, compliance is a thing and you're responsible for it. And we're going to, need you to do your bit in compliance. And, very rarely when I come across compliance problems, is it junior lawyers that are the person who's, you know, had the incident happen to them. The junior lawyer is generally quite compliant as a breed, especially against what I was talking about before about purpose-led kind of existence. You know, we in compliance, we have the most success when we talk about compliance being valuable, about being safe, about protecting people. People buy into it most then. And you know, we've got we've scared everybody. Compliance is frightening. We've got regulators fining us left, right, and centre. Okay, personally and the business being fined left, right, and centre in AML particularly. An increased fining powers coming. It sounds scary. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be scary. Compliance is, as I said before, it's about protecting people. It's about a framework. So good risk management, the importance of having a strong compliance program, good and visible risk management. See, you know, one of the things is you've got people feeling scared, but if you're managing risk properly, people start to get confident that if this is going pear-shaped, I've got somewhere to go, or I won't be asked to do anything I don't know how to do, or I won't have pressure put on me to do things that I won't be able to, or I won't be bullied into doing things. This is all, you know, risk management. And so having a very clear program of risk management is super important. Being able to talk about risk management, do risk management in practice. I'll give you some tips if you're interested about risk management in practice. How do you get people to believe that you know they are safe? I've talked about this loads over the years. One of the, I mentioned before about being off with mental health issues. One of the problems that I had was I was scared of saying, I'm stuck, please help. I was scared of being judged for that. I was scared that it was going to affect my career prospects. Pretty common in younger junior lawyers. Okay, scared of putting the hand up. So one of the things, as soon as I came back from being off poorly, one of the things I started was a bring out your dead meeting, I called it. And it was my initiative. I was a kind of associate at the time. And I said, right, guys, I'm going to book a room every 4 weeks. And if you've got a file you're stuck on, please come along and come and see us. We'll work together as a team and we'll figure out what to do on the job you're stuck on. I mean, come before that if you want, but there's definitely this meeting where you can bring your tricky files and talk about it. And that was my initiative because I knew that I felt I couldn't, you know, go to ask for support. That says something about how supported I felt. And obviously this meeting was successful. We ran it for a few years. People would come along and bring out your dead meeting. And I've advised many clients to do this and, you know, not just have a kind of cohort of associates running off, for the partners to say, come to this meeting. I'm going to bring my tricky files to this meeting. You bring yours. We'll talk about them together. What this does is it starts to show that it is a safe place. If you're stuck, it's okay to say you're stuck because look, we've got the partners coming to this meeting saying, I don't know how to do stuff. It encourages that openness and that being able to put your hand up and ask for help. So it's a really strong message that people are supported, which is important for people to want to have confidence in your firm. When it also comes, risk management is also really important. And you know, we've got standards and regulations, we've got things about supervision and you know, making sure people feel supported, but particularly I'm going to come and talk about culture a little bit more, but just flagging up if younger lawyers feel the risk of burnout, they don't want to stay in the profession because, you know, they're always on, they can't escape, people are at them all the time, and they're worried about, you know, what the consequences of getting behind are. You know, we're having people leave the profession. That is a real thing. That is what we are seeing, that people don't feel that this career that they've come into is sustainable in the long term and they're off. That's, you know, why we've got the problem. I just flag up, I'm sure you're all aware of it, right? But there was recent amendment, well, not that recent now, if I'm honest, a few years ago, an introduction and modification to the standards and regulations in relation to treating other people with respect. One of the things behind the junior lawyers feeling they're always on, they lack autonomy, it's high pressured, and they're feeling that law's just not for them, can be because of potentially how they're treated by elders within the firm. Sure, it wouldn't happen in your firm. The SRA brought this rule out. Now, when they were bringing this rule out, they were deciding in which bit of the code to put it in. It exists in the bit of the code that's around running the practice, okay? And essentially what it's saying is, as a business, you have to make sure that people know it's not okay to treat people with, disrespectfully. And if you see it, people treating people disrespectfully, you've got to do something about it. You've got to challenge them about it. So just, query, why did we need this rule? Why did we need it? If you look at some of the Solicitors Disciplinary Tribunal decisions around younger lawyers, there's a bit of a trend sometimes with them. The backdating documents, signing witness statements because they didn't have time to get it to a witness statement. One not long ago, I did a webinar about disciplinary cases, lessons from disciplinary cases. There was one with a lawyer who had worried about getting in trouble for time recording in COVID, so over time recorded, ended up struck off for dishonesty, for billing, it's fraud. Behind a lot of these stories are the lawyers saying, I felt under pressure. I felt I had to do it. I didn't feel I had a way out. Now, it doesn't change how the SRA sees that particular lawyer's behaviour, and they'll often see it as without integrity or dishonest in what they've done. But this rule came about, I think, because the inevitable next question is, if a person behaved like that and felt that they had to do that, what's going on in the firm? And that's what this rule's about. So if you haven't already done this, I definitely think you should take some time, or if you're not a CULP, definitely your CULP needs to sit down, take some time and think about, what do we tell people about this treating people with respect? What do we have in terms of whistleblowing? What do we do if we see it? What's the procedure? What if it happens to be the biggest biller? Yesterday, I was on LinkedIn, and there was a guy who did a great post who talked about this notion of a biggest biller, that this demon in a law firm, this biggest biller who gets he's the baddie, who thinks he can do whatever they want because of the biggest biller. And he said one day he was in a firm and he was sat sharing an office with the biggest biller, and somebody came in, a junior lawyer came in to speak to the biggest biller, and the biggest biller was at his screen. The junior lawyer came in, kind of stage left, and he sat back, turned around and gave the lawyer full attention. And he said to me, well, he didn't just say it to me, he said it to LinkedIn, but I read it. He said, we don't give enough credit to the people who are doing the great stuff. We always kind of villainize this biggest biller. And I said, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. There are amazing people in law firms that are supporting people. Unfortunately, the ones that are bullying and the ones that are making junior lawyers feel like they've got to be there till 9 o'clock or else they're going to be in trouble at night, we've got to call them out, and that's what this rule's about. So what do you do about that? Do you have anyone like that? Have you covered it in training? Have you people have management training? Have your junior lawyers been told it's not okay if someone treats you like that, please say something? These are things that if they're there in the present and they're visible, start to kind of break down the fear of risk management and compliance, because you've already built a program that's really effective. We've got proactive compliance. So compliance, often people are scared of it because they feel it's a thing that only really you talk about when something's gone wrong. Complaints, compliance, claims, compliance, breaches of the code of conduct, compliance, data breaches, compliance. What about proactive compliance? What about using compliance as a way to make sure that people are supported and to spot issues before they turn into disasters? And this is where tech can help you. I was meeting with someone today and talking about insurance. And one of the things I said was, there are no new insurance claims. There are no new circumstances for professional indemnity insurance claims. They've all happened. Occasionally you get new things coming out of the woodwork, like when crypto started, when cyber started, there must have been a first one. But generally, most things that result in claims are not new. They're things that have happened before. And one of the challenges we have across the sector, especially when we've got 10,000 law firms in it, is sharing that knowledge, sharing that information in a way that means we can spot it. But what I do know from working on this for quite a while, so even though, like I say, people know me for AML, I actually do quite a big sideline in preventing claims because that's about safety. And there are loads of telltale signs that will be in your case management system, if not any other system, but also in your file reviews and things like that. Certainly in a case management system that will start to tell you if you're going to look proactively when people are struggling, a safety net. So when I was struggling, there were loads of signs if you look for them, if you knew what to look for. Inactivity on files. You know, back in the day, you know, because this was in the 2000s, I literally had that proverbial pile of files behind me gathering dust, the ones that were too hard. I thought I'll look at them when I get more time. But suddenly they've been there 6 months and I've not looked at them. You can find that on tech when they've not been looked at, they've not been worked at. You can start to delve in to it to spot issues. One of my favorite ones is where somebody opens a file note to do a file note on the system so that it doesn't trigger the inactivity measure that you're measuring, doesn't type anything and then saves it immediately, or types like a macro into it like ALB reviewing the file, waiting for an update from the doctor, you know, 1 unit. But that's taking me, you know, 5 seconds to write, close the thing. Now, not a lot of people have built their compliance programs to measure that, but your tech is capable of doing it. Tech is capable of doing it. And so understanding how you can see the signs from here, proactively be doing compliance. And this isn't to catch people out. This is to help them. When you do have people who are struggling, you do have people who are feeling overwhelmed, there's a couple of other clues that you can get. They never take holidays. Never take holidays. They're scared of anyone finding out their files. They are the first ones in the morning, last one in at night. Their billing actually might be quite good, but they might be working a lot of hours to get it. These are things that your data can tell you. And if you react to them, you train people to look out for these signs, not just, you know, the obvious ones like a complaint or a claim, you can probably start to spot them before they turn into disaster. And then building trust and reputation, right? It's about culture, okay? Trust is an interesting concept. It's an interesting concept because it can be hard to earn and easy to lose. And one of the things that I think people are really aware of in this tech-enabled age is perception from outside. And what people are certainly looking for in recruitment these days is culture, and how that supports compliance, and it's super important in attracting talent. I've just finished recruitment myself. I just recruited 2 new people. One of the things that we did was we shared with them what our values are. Now you might think, well, Amy, that's HR. What you're talking about that being compliance for? Not really. Our values we expect people to comply with, to demonstrate. But is compliance is not just, it's just not a rule or a law, but it is a part of our program, which is these are the behaviors that we expect people to demonstrate. And we collected them through quite an interesting process. If you've not done it, it's definitely worth spending time to do. We sat down and we went, who are the best people we've got on the team? As a management team, we sat down, we all picked our own people. Some of us picked the same people. And then we were asked to capture what it is about those people that said that they were, you know, brilliant, why we would clone them. And we ended up with about 30 different attributes, and quite a few of them were the same or similar. So we boiled them down and we've ended up with 5 of them. And they're not just like the original values. They're here on my mouse mat. Here's my original values. We gave everyone on a mouse mat because it was that important to us. And they're still in the values, the ones I came up with, but they're my values, what I think. This is what the business's values. It's not my thing to own. It's the business's thing to own. And I can't tell you how much that has made a difference to our recruitment and our communication as a team. Because my team know that we're expected to demonstrate these values. We actually assess everybody quarterly against the values, including ourselves. Have we done what we said we would do? And we reward people on that basis too. And we hire people on that basis if we think that they've got the attributes that we value, and sometimes we exit people on that basis too. So that's super important to establish these values, socialize them with the team, and demonstrate a commitment to compliance with it. Now, coming on to so what we've got to do, what's the to-do list based on that? Thinking about innovative law firm of tomorrow. Okay, so what are the firm structures? Is that consultancy one right? I had a client about 6 years ago say to me, Amy, we've got a problem with this succession plan that we've had for loads of years in the legal sector. I can't find people who want to do it. And one of the people that I want to take over the business is my son, and I really don't want him to mortgage himself, you know, to the hilt to be able to do it. And I don't think I'm going to attract enough other people if I do that, even if he does it. So I'm going to have to find a new way. And he did find a new way. I can't tell you what it is, bless him. And he's not with us any longer, but I know his son. He probably knows how he did it. But he did get a new wave of people involved with this, a new structure, a new way of funding, so that the old equity partners got released their capital and the new partners took over. But there's definitely something about thinking about different models that remunerate people differently, or that have a different way of delivering from the way we've always done it, or we were brought up to do it. And then I did touch on this before, this using professionals to support the business. Law is a business. I'm remain frustrated with our colleges and universities for not making this clear enough to people, because they've never made it clear enough to me. When you become a solicitor, yes, you are a purveyor of legal advice, but you're also a business person. And there's loads of stuff I don't know about running a business. And that's me, 26 years qualified and now a business owner for 7 years. And I have outsourced finance, outsourced HR, do my own compliance because I kind of know that bit. But I'm an outsourced IT person as well, because I don't know any of this stuff. And I'm running a small business, and you might be, in a small business. I can't afford to bring those people in myself. So I'm looking to make sure that I'm not trying to give that job to somebody within the partnership, within the management team. And if I am, I'm making sure they're fully supported. So, Mark, my husband's our finance director. He was an engineer for 27 years before I dragged him into this. So he has a coach who helps him with the finance. Emma, who's our COO, she manages the business, and we have HR people, outsource HR, because they've got that degree of independence. They can look at things from a different perspective. So, thinking about outsourcing, I'm not pitching for work, by the way, when I say this, but what I'm trying to get across is that there are certain people, when we come into law, there are people attracted by the law because they really like solving problems for people, and not all the other stuff that comes with it. And I do think that the law firm of tomorrow has these specialists coming in to do that, rather than trying to get lawyers who are brilliant at law, brilliant at client service, to fit into molds that they just don't fit in finance or HR. So there we go. Leadership and cultural change, super important. If you are after a role in a business that matches your values, it feels like it's purpose driven, the strong leadership is super important. So that's you today. That's you today, and the people you're bringing up. What training are they getting? I can't remember the stats now, but I have a colleague on Team Teal, and she does culture and leadership training, and it is frighteningly small, the amount of management training that people in management positions in the legal sector have actually had. I used to run a program. As I said, I was a head of learning at a law firm for 7 years, and so I designed a program for leadership training that started as soon as you entered the building, whatever role you were in. We helped you understand about people management, whether that was because you were going to be managed or because it was about good communication skills or things like this. And it went all the way up. And do you know where we really started to kind of train people to be able to be leaders in the business? As soon as they qualified. So up until qualification, we're teaching them to be lawyers. As soon as they get to lawyers, we're teaching them how to lead. We're recognizing that there are leaders at all levels in the business, not just those that are at you know, at the top of the earning tree or the top of the responsibility tree. I was telling you before about Tracy and there was Linda and there was Joe all in the typing, right? And there was Carol in the typing, in the secretarial field. And Carol would not do anything Carol didn't want to do. She was an influencer. She was a leader. And recognizing that and making sure that we brought her on the journey was super important to any change we wanted to pull off at that law firm. And I still see that now. I still see that now. So when I'm talking about leadership, I'm not just talking about the people at the top, although that's super important. It's whoever's influencing everybody. And you might go, well, Amy, we're a law firm, you know, and it's hard enough doing that. And I agree with you, it definitely is. But if we're wanting to make sure that our business is sustainable going in the future, just look around to who the younger people and us are looking up to for inspiration. Their leaders, and especially in this kind of tech-enabled world where you can get really easy access to leaders and see what they've got to say. Not going to wait for them to turn up on the news, have you? Just go on TikTok and find them. You know, it's really obvious to people that that's what businesses should have. So yeah, enough of a plug for leadership training, but you know, it's important. And talent retention. So I remember an old boss of mine saying, Amy, if they've been anywhere for like, you know, if they change jobs every 2 years, run a mile from them. Don't trust them. Because when they get found out, they must run, they must leave, they mustn't be any good. That's not the world now. That's not the world. People don't want jobs for life necessarily. If we're going to attract them to take over a law firm for us and keep all those people that we've been employing in jobs long term, we need to build something that is about talent retention, is about a place that they feel they can continue to grow and that meets their needs on a long-term basis. And I think, as I've talked about already, there's tech in that so that people don't have to do, you know, admin that doesn't feel fulfilling. There's making sure people feel supported. If things are starting to go off the rails, they'll know about that. There's culture. And so culture is really important. I know we've got 5 minutes left. Culture is super important. This is a diagram of a methodology that I use called compliance that works. And basically there's 6 elements to building a compliance program that works. You need to be clear about what you're supposed to be doing. You need to have capacity and resources to do it. You need to communicate clearly in an engaging way about what you want people to do. You need to get them to commit to do it, to agree to do it. And then you need to be consistent about following through if they're not doing it and checking that they are. But the biggest one is culture. And that's because culture, if you haven't got culture, a culture that supports compliance, everybody's got culture, of course they have. If you haven't got culture that supports compliance, the whole rest of the thing will come crashing down. And over my time, here's some things that people have said to me, Amy. You know, I don't understand it in the law. We don't get any non-compliance in air traffic control. You're right. There is no non-compliance in air traffic control because people die if that happens. You don't get it there. So how can we get it here? You can't tackle that partner, the biggest biller. Well, we just talked about that. Oh, Carol, you know what Carol's like. Just like that. She's just old-fashioned. These are, you know, wondering why we've got non-compliance when you don't have it in other industries. Worried about people tackling, having honest conversations with people to point out that they're actually not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then not kind of working around Carol or anybody else that is not coming on the journey with you. All of these things, they will undermine your efforts to build that business that people want to join. So just some quick actions, conscious of the time. One of the things to recognize is something I learned called the leadership shadow. What is, you know, it's all about what are people doing and what do people take from what people are doing. If you've got, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be very clear that we need to make money, this is a business and we need to get billing done, that's the only message that ever comes out of the leadership team, then don't be surprised if people prioritize that over anything else, over compliance in particular. So what shadow are we casting on purpose or accidentally that can be creating a culture that isn't the one we expect it to be? Be clear on risk appetite. So yeah, it's a whole other webinar. risk appetite. But basically, you know, there isn't a one size fits all when it comes to compliance and risk management, or even management at all. Everything's based on risk. The approach you take is based on your particular risk tolerance. And one of the problems with the partnership model, where it runs into problems, is where there isn't an aligned risk appetite. So if I'm sat on the sidelines watching the dynamics of a partnership where we know those people are, you know, for, those people are against, and there's a lot of tension there because they're not matched on risk appetite. No way do I want to join that team. Back to what Alicia said to me, be very careful you're joining a marriage with these people, you know. So being consistent on risk, aligned on risk appetite, being able to communicate really clearly about that is super important. Holding people, the biggest biller who's being rude to people, to account, super important. Thinking about difficult conversations. Do we know how to have difficult conversations? Are we avoiding them? That's the key question, really. Have we avoided any difficult conversations? That probably means we need to know how to do them. There's no reason you should know how to do difficult conversations if nobody's helped you learn how. You don't come out the womb knowing how to do it. You know, it's a skill. Incentivizing value in compliance and demonstrating that you care about compliance with the things that I've talked about, bring out your dead, things like that. Consequences for non-compliance, that's about my consistency cog. Are we holding people to account when they don't do what they said they were going to do? And are we empowering people to call out if people aren't being compliant, aren't acting with respect? Have we got that whistleblowing in place? Being open and transparent about what you're doing, where you're going. We have a strategy day every 90 days. We have in between that, we have an all hands call every month where I give my team the a strategic update on what we're doing and where we're going, so that nothing catches them by surprise. We are as open as we possibly can be about where we're going and what we're doing, and that means sharing the successes and the struggles so that people don't feel that things are happening that they don't know about. That scares them. And then if you're going to think about changing something, please, please, please sit in the seat of everybody in your firm and just think how it'll play out with them. There is many an initiative that's been rolled out by management at law firms hoping that it would make a great impact, and then actually creates the opposite because they didn't think how such and such would receive it, or that how that person would hear it. So yeah, so I think that's it for me, Billy.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Amy. Yep, there was some really great important points there that you pulled. We do just have a couple of questions, and if anyone else wants to add some questions, now would be the time, just by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom. So first questions is, you mentioned that the traditional partnership model is losing its appeal among young lawyers. What specific factors are contributing to this shift, and how are law firms responding?
So I genuinely, I mean, kind of all the stuff I talked about, but certainly the liability and the skill base of the partners that are in there, and do they know, you know, where are they about running a business? What do they know about running a business? So I just don't think it makes the same sort of sense that it used to make to people. And so how firms are responding, as I said in the session, I think I'm seeing much more of these different types of structures, more limited companies, more people where people have got defined roles, and you're seeking support from people, potentially outsource support from people, so that you can have the right people doing those roles instead of getting, you know, it's a kind of what's a round peg into a square hole, you know. Just sometimes it just doesn't work when we're asking people who are brilliant lawyers to do other stuff in a partnership model. The other thing that's not attractive about the partnership model is the political barter that happens. I'm sure this doesn't happen in your firm, by the way, if you are a traditional partnership, but the fear is, and sometimes the reality is that there becomes quite a lot of politics involved, and your kind of value-driven, purpose-driven person wants nothing to do with that. They don't want to be having their days taken up by worrying about politics. As I say, I'm sure it's not a thing in your firm, but that is the perception, that the partnership model, if you scratch my back now, I'll scratch yours, but if you don't scratch my back now, I won't scratch yours later on. That kind of thing. That's the worry, that people are like, well, I don't want anything to do with that.
Great. And then burnout seems to be a significant issue in the legal profession, especially among young lawyers. Can you elaborate on the specific cause of burnout and how they are affecting retention in law firms?
Yeah, so gosh, what they called, you know, the people who said COVID was a epidemic or pandemic, those people, the World Health or whatever they call the organization, they class burnout as I forget the exact wording now, but it's essentially untreated stress that you've had for a long time, and that essentially your body just, your brain stops, and that can affect your physical health as well as your mental health. And specifically, the always on, the lack of boundaries, the being able to maintain boundaries to feel like you can have your own space and time. A lot of it though is accidental. It's not on purpose, the situations that lead to people feeling like this. But it's so for example, we're trying to establish the right way of dealing with this here about all the time communication. I mean, for big chunks of the year now, I'm on a completely different time zone. So I'm over in Australia. I'm sure you have the same issue at Practice Evolve because you're on both sides of the globe company.
Yeah.
And so when I'm working, everyone I know in the UK is asleep. So if I want to send emails, my team could wake up, pick up the phone and see 20 emails off me and go, oh my God, I've just woken up. So I'm conscious of that boundary. And I try, and we're talking about switching notifications off on like comms channels and things like that, and helping people set boundaries, especially our younger people. They're scared about setting boundaries and getting in trouble. So being really open about, we don't expect you to be on 24/7, and let's think about it. There's a quid pro quo for that. I used to work in a law firm that had a no long hours policy, no emails to be sent after 7 o'clock. I hated it, did my head right in, because I do my best work after 7 o'clock at night when everyone's gone to sleep. And that's why I'm on the other side of the world, right? I'm having a great old time when everyone's asleep. I get loads of work done. And it caused me a lot of stress. And I was like, oh God, I'm going to get in trouble for sending that email. Like, so just putting a hard and fast rule in is probably not the right answer to burnout prevention. Creating a psychologically safe place. There are two people I'd recommend if you're interested in this following. Leah Steele, who is on LinkedIn, always talking about burnout, always. And she now also talks about ADHD and neurodiversity. And then Gemma Ellison, who's the lady in Team Teal that talks about culture and burnout. They talk about this quite a lot. So I definitely look at them. And also Law Care's work. They talk a lot about it too.
Great. And then you've emphasized the importance of a strong compliance program in the law firm of tomorrow. Can you explain why this is so critical and how it ties into broader trends in the profession?
Well, compliance isn't going anywhere, right? Compliance is like, if I spoke to you, so I'm in Australia, right? I say, what's your law firm compliance? They're like, what are you talking about, Amy? We've got rules that we follow. What's the thing? Like compliance has become such a big thing in the UK because we moved away from rule-based compliance to outcome-focused compliance, where we're expected to figure out what the right thing is for our business. AML, risk-based compliance, same kind of thing, right? That's difficult when we're not trained risk managers. We're not trained in how to do this. We're not trained in how to figure out what a risk appetite is and then make decisions in line with it. We're just not trained in it. And so learning how to do that, because compliance is now a recognized discipline that is, as important as your finance function, as important as your HR function. I think, the world certainly is waking up to that as a result of the change in the way that we're regulated. Well, certainly they are in the UK. I'm sure they'll catch up everywhere else eventually. But I think that realizing that it's not a tick box, it's not a policy that you buy in a template and put your name on it. That's not compliance. Compliance is, how do we keep people safe? What are we doing to make sure our clients get the right service and our staff feel safe when they're there?
Great. And then given the statistics on mental health challenges in the legal profession, what steps can law firms take to create a healthier work environment and support the well-being of their staff?
So psychological safety, I just mentioned it briefly. I would definitely look into that. Psychological safety is the most important thing, which means make it safe for someone to be vulnerable. And I did talk about that with the Bring Out the Dead meetings. If you show you're vulnerable then people will follow. You'll be setting a precedent for people to feel it's okay to say. So when I mess something up, I tell my team. I mean, I've done that for a long time, but certainly in Team Teal, if I get something wrong, I tell them and I own it, because then that shows them it's okay for them to say, I've messed this thing up, and own it. So psychological safety is definitely what I would look into. We've done quite a lot of work of that as at Team Teal, teaching people how to do healthy challenge, to have disagreements with other people. And if I'm sure none of you have that partnership table I was talking about with the full of the politics, but if you do have that, or you recognize that, or the potential for that, psychological safety just in that group, sorting that out, enabling those people to resolve their challenges respectfully, in a psychologically safe way, that will filter down through your business. So yeah, Gemma, Alison, I already mentioned, is who's helped us personally with it, psychological safety. So I definitely look into that.
Perfect. And I think that's all the questions for now. Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, well, thanks so much, Amy. It's been great, all three of them. Just before everyone goes, I'd like to make everyone aware of the webinars I've got coming up in the next month or two. The first one will be Scott Simmons at Legal Balance on September 18th, and then just keep your eye peeled on a cybersecurity one, a cybercrime one coming in October. And yeah, I thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you very much, Amy.
Thank you. Thanks very much. See you soon. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.